Welcome to the Work is Weird Now podcast. Whether you're nearing retirement, entering the workforce for the first time, or caught somewhere in the confusing muddle in the middle, you're likely sensing it and you're probably living it. We know we are, and we want to know why. Listen in as we interview experts and everyday people like you to find out how best to navigate the ever-growing weirdness of work in the modern age.
Welcome to the Work is Weird Now podcast. Today's guest is Abigail Wilmore. Abigail is an accomplished HR leader with over 25 years' experience in luxury fashion and beauty. Starting her career on the shop floor with no university degree, she discovered her passion for human resources early on and has since completed a master's in HR and become a champion of human-centered workplace cultures. As the founder of People Flow and a chartered fellow of the CIPD, Abigail is dedicated to leading with empathy and driving positive change in the workplace. Welcome, Abigail.
Thank you.
So before we kick off into today's core question, can you tell us a little bit about your career journey?
Sure. So, I've been in human resources since it was called personnel. And I knew as soon as I arrived in HR, so I started on the shop floor. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do after I didn't become a ballerina. And then I had the opportunity whilst I was working for Estee Lauder to move into HR. And I knew as soon as I arrived in, the lowest level position that this was a place that I really wanted to be, and worked my way up from there. I guess my career really took off when I got my role at Gucci Group to set up the HR shared service in the UK for all the brands in the group at the time, which was amazing. And then another kind of big step in my career was when I went in-house at Stella McCartney, which was one of the brands of the group, in 2014. And that's where my role really became strategic, and I kind of got really deep within that brand's culture. And it was just an amazing dream job for many, many years, where I was able to really start being creative in how I was helping to support and design workplace culture with people. And it was just a great experience for me for many years, as I said, and in a founder-led business that was a really diverse brand as well, female founder, and pioneering sustainable fashion. I knew that I wanted to bring my kind of brand of HR to more businesses. And that's why I started People Flow. That was the end of 2021 as a side hustle initially. I took a few more in-house chief people officer roles, Barbara Stern and Tom Ford Fashion. But I knew that I wanted to work with more businesses, mainly around culture transformation, but also, HR is so vast today, just helping us as a profession to kind of elevate to where we need to be, which is, I know, kind of part of what we're going to discuss today.
So our core question today, as Dan said, is HR fit for purpose? We're assuming the answer is broadly no, otherwise this would be a very short episode. At what point in your career journey did you first start to feel that traditional HR models just weren't working anymore and needed to be done differently?
I think quite early on, but I just didn't have the language, or I didn't know, what that would look like necessarily. But I always felt like there must be something more. I went to uni, so I didn't go straight from school, and I studied HR, and that's when I started to become involved with the CIPD and kind of really learn the disciplines of HR. But even then, I felt like there's got to be something more real and like connective about human resources. And I was searching for what that might be, and, came across some incredible people, one in particular who became sort of mentor, who really was championing, human-centered design. And again, as soon as that door sort of opened, I was like, yes, this is how I feel human resources should be intuitively. And then it just kind of grew from there, my interest, and then experimenting with different ideas around that.
So in your mind, what are some of those outdated practices? What do they look like? It's been a while since I've worked within an organization.
Yeah.
I remember feeling like HR was very much on the side of the organization as opposed to on my side. And I also felt like the relationship was quite computer says no, like it was sort of policies and procedures over actual kind of messy nuances of human beings. Is that kind of what you see as the outdated version versus what you'd like to see?
Yes, absolutely. I think HR does have a bad reputation, and that is because there is a lot of HR that is about compliance, risk management, and just HR is not trusted. Yes, we are paid by the organization, but you are always kind of this intermediary, and you're wanting to, understand how people are feeling and what they're going through in order to create, the right environment there. So I think that is more modern HR. But yeah, there's still so much of the profession that is about paper pushing or no longer with actual paper, but with the compliance side, which is really important, because one thing I definitely saw in my career is you can't be strategic and kind of do all of these wonderful experimental initiatives without having the compliance part right. You need that credibility.
Yeah. I've been in marketing, I say, for a long time, and there was a corporate internal comms video that we did, and marketing was seen as an enabling function, as was HR, as was finance, IT, etc. And we did this, what is the perception of your function? And we had each of the professionals. So marketing was like the colouring in and make it look pretty, and HR, it was the crying on the shoulder department or the firing department. And it's overcoming all these, but like you say, it's so much more beyond policies and processes and all of those things. And I'm really keen to learn what's this more futuristic side of HR, because one thing I've been pulled on previously is calling it HR.
Yeah.
It's we're people and culture. Now HR is very outdated. How are you finding that in your world?
Yeah, the naming, the brand of HR needs to change, and it's shifting for sure. People and culture, or people and development, or just the people team is much more common now, which I like very much. But there's still a lot of HR. I mean, there's still some personnel, in some places. But I think, it needs a rebrand. Essentially, it needs to be rebranded. We need to think like marketeers often, I feel, in human resources. We need to be speaking, well, there needs to be the transparency there, but really carefully crafted campaigns about your products, if you like, and how, the initiatives that you're pinning together. I think where there's a big gap is a lot of businesses are still one size fits all, because it's easier to have those kind of big scale policies or big scale initiatives, even, that is one size fits all. But the last 5 years have shown us that, there are so many divergent needs within an organization, which were always there, but suddenly they all came to the surface. And that's where I think really kind of forward thinking modern HR stepped forward during the last 5 years, during the pandemic and after, or not. And you could really see then the organizations that were kind of pioneering forwards versus ones that just weren't able to, deliver what needed to happen during that time, which was, really thoughtful communication and helping people through this huge change. And then coming out the other side, designing policies and initiatives and products that help to meet some of those needs. And one size fits all just doesn't work anymore.
And is that about understanding the specific needs of the organization, or is it about having a really good understanding of the people within the organization, or what makes you better at dealing with that change and navigating that course post-COVID?
Yeah, I think it has to come always from the business strategy, and, great people agendas are always going to be linking to the business strategy. But you need to understand what is going on. And you're in a very unique position in human resources to be able to understand the ecosystems, plural, of the entire organization and use that. So whether it's through, more regular surveying or gathering people and asking them, you need to be able to understand the context and what people's needs are to then design the right people agenda that is going to be able to deliver on the business strategy or the priority.
Is there tension between the two?
Very often.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very often. And that's again where I think the other side of what I do now with people flow is build this community for HR professionals to talk about that tension, which is often not really known. Actually, it's not really thought of. That this kind of matching process, or let's say holding all of the knowledge that you have that might not actually match with where the company's going from a commercial standpoint or a profit standpoint. Holding all of that is quite intense in many ways, and there's not a lot of outlets for the more senior you are, especially, to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, my heart goes out to you because I think this has got to be such a huge challenge right now. I really do feel for people who are in the kind of people function of businesses, because I would imagine that now more than ever, HR teams are under enormous pressure to automate, improve services, downsize headcount with AI or whatever it is that's going on that's sort of the drivers of the business at the moment. And then at the same time, you have complex people needs that you need to deal with that are potentially greater than they've ever been in terms of hybrid working and neurodiversity and all these other aspects that are being brought in from the human side of the equation. How do you deal with that? I mean, there's just so much pressure, right? How do you navigate that change?
I think that's the conundrum that needs solving, that isn't completely clear yet. For sure, AI is already helping us to do that. So having, removing one size fits all, helping people to feel like they're having a personalized experience with the company, and they have different options that they can select from a reward perspective, learning perspective, career perspective within that organization. Making all of that available is difficult, but technology is for sure making that a whole lot easier. And so it is, somehow merging technology with, to bring in all of those needs, to then be able to know what it is that you need to design, and continually asking people, because I think we forget once an initiative has launched sometimes, and goes back to that kind of marketing lens of following up and seeing how it landed and whether people even know about it and how well it's been communicated. It's all of that technology will be able to help us with, but it's definitely not easy. And you do need some budget to do that. If you are also working without budget, which a lot of my kind of career has been spent in luxury fashion, which is really suffering at the moment, like a lot of other industries as well, then that's even more challenging.
And enabling departments like marketing, it's smaller teams do more. It's the pressure. It's a pressure cooker, right? What are you hearing back from them, from the front line, from HR leaders that are their biggest challenges at the moment? But also, what is on the people agenda, like right now in August 2025? What are the three biggest challenges or issues that people are bringing or are asking for, requirement?
I think from an HR perspective, still the biggest question that we get asked from our community members is, how can I be perceived as strategic when I'm just constantly pulled down into the operational side of things? And I think that has dramatically changed over the last few years, not only because the employee voice has got louder, but it's more okay to not be okay at work. And therefore HR's door, which has always been open, is even more open. And so that 5 minutes that person needs is always obviously 25 or an hour, 25 minutes or an hour. And so I think just from a workload and time perspective, things have become really difficult. So how do you be perceived as this strategic business partner when you've got people queuing up to come and have time with you, which is also really important. So I think that's the biggest challenge that I hear all the time from the HR community. And then from organizations and people within organizations, it is still, a lot of companies are grappling with what is our culture when we are hybrid, you know, how do we manage that? How do we still stay true to ourselves? Are we able to go fast enough when everyone is hybrid? Or, you know, it's those kind of challenges that I think a lot of businesses are still finding their way through. And then AI for sure. And I'm not an expert, but I do know that most, you know, people teams that I'm working with in different companies are playing with some AI tools, but are certainly not sitting at the forefront of designing what, you know, the landscape's going to look like with the chief technology officer. In fact, we're seeing more and more roles where CIO or chief technology officer and CPO, chief people officer, are one role, and it's happening in the US. Which, and I don't know many. It does make sense, and I just don't know many senior HR leaders that are ready for that. I know I'm not, but like, what is our plan for that? And we should be. I mean, a lot of people are thinking about it, that's for sure, but I think we need to have a clear strategy. And of course, it's hard to strategize about the unknown. It's hard to know what the time frame will be, but it's very likely that HR teams are going to look entirely different very soon.
I mean, that obviously represents those organizations that are very far ahead in their thinking. I would imagine you've got more on the opposite end of the spectrum who are still, as we started the podcast discussing, are still kind of living in the dark ages of HR.
Yes.
When you go into organizations as a consultant now, what are those kind of alarm bells that are ringing in terms of the organizational mindset towards the people function? What worries you the most?
If HR is reporting to legal or finance, that is a big red flag for me. I always ask if people and the culture are on leadership meeting agendas. And not just at the end, because I'm so used to it. You know, we'll get to that, and then you just never do within a meeting.
Or just seen as a risk.
Yeah. That's always a question that I ask. I think another big red flag for me is always the annual survey. And so many businesses still, I mean, I think businesses still have an annual survey, which just feels pointless. It's almost impossible for any team, the people team, the team, you know, leader of a certain function to answer any of the, you know,
at one point retrospective too, isn't it?
So, and somebody could have just had like a bad commute and a bad start to their day, and they've gone and been like, oh, I need to, and they've answered it in such a different negative mindset, and it next time is a year ahead, right? It's just not right.
Exactly. An organization can do, you know, many things and invest in a lot of the, you know, outcome of an annual survey, but then people are not linking it to what they've said, and it just often falls flat. So that's another red flag that I kind of ask about within an organization when I'm first going in to assess where they might be at with.
So do you usually recommend just more regular surveying? Is that the way to do it? Or is it a mix of input?
Yeah, I think it's regular surveying for sure. And really does depend on your demographic, the population, what the organization is willing to do in terms of regularity. I've tried every 2 weeks, which is definitely too much. If everything is going, you know, really well and a brand is growing year on year, then more regular surveying is definitely easier. But when it's tough, then I think once a month, a few questions. It doesn't, you know, and because annual surveys often are like, I don't know, 20 to 60 questions. Whereas if you're surveying more regularly, it's, you know, you only need to ask a few questions. But I think then they can be more tactical, and managers can do something about it. And that's when it really becomes a business tool rather than an HR initiative.
Do you think organizations are effective at listening, generally speaking? Are they good at extracting that information from their people and understanding what's really going on?
I have seen it work really well when I was at Stella, and it did become a real business tool, and managers were looking at the information regularly and wanting to know And, I think we also weighted compensation or bonus structure towards having a thriving team. And one of the elements was, your scores within your culture survey. And so leaders were wanting to look into it. So I think it can work. But then again, when things started to become difficult in the brand in terms of sales, or, downsizing that we had to go through, then of course, no one wants to really hear what is happening within their teams, because there's little budget to do the things that you might need to do. So then I think it becomes difficult. But generally, I don't think that there's enough link back in businesses to what employees are asking for or saying.
Yeah. Let's talk about recruitment for a minute. So that is obviously the sharp end of automation in HR, right? So that's where it's really happened.
Yes.
And is it your impression that automation has improved outcomes in terms of recruiting the right people into organizations, or has it depersonalized and worsened it overall?
At the moment, I'd say that we're in a transitional phase because it's not working right now. In so many businesses that I go into, they are not able still to accurately and quickly find the right talent at the right time, even with, great tools. And from a candidate perspective, it's just an absolute mess out there at the moment, with people not hearing back and, hundreds of applications happening for every single role. So I think it's a moment. It will definitely improve things, hopefully in the not too distant future, because we do need to move towards more skills-based hiring. And that is going to help us to do that, rather than, your length of experience and your experiences.
I mean, with that in mind, with the need for more skills-based hiring, is the CV dead?
I mean, I've felt like the CV is dead for a while, but again, it's like just not knowing, not having something that's working yet to replace it. Yeah. And when I'm speaking with students, which I do a lot, unfortunately, I see just so many regurgitated ChatGPT CVs, and that's just so pointless. And I often encourage more video messaging, actually.
Yeah, I love that, because we saw the introduction of photographs and things like that on CVs for a while, and then there was the whole conversation around bias, which I totally understand. But the video entry we see a lot in grad schemes and things like that as well. It's tricky, isn't it, with AI, and it's that human-centric element. What is the right approach? Because I've spoken about it on the pod before. I applied for a role a year or so ago, and because I hadn't had a director in my title, I wasn't put through for the round, even though for the past 6 years I've reported directly into a board member. So there was no director above me, but I was head on, right? And it goes back to that. If you don't fit the bill or tick the box on the screening element, you're out.
Yeah.
And that almost feels just so unfair.
Yeah. It's missing the nuance of that situation.
So how do we do that when you can easily apply it in 0.1 of a second? What does that then mean?
I also had an experience where I took my CV and I took a job description and I put them into ChatGPT and said, cater this towards, and I've heard that that's actually a very effective way, and people are being really successful with that, and you can see why. But then when I looked closely at it, it had generated 3 jobs for different big organizations that I've never worked with or for. And so I asked it why it had done that. And it said, based on your experience, it seems like you would have worked at these places. So I thought, I wonder how much just inaccuracy there is out there. People just pushing things through without giving it a lot of interrogation.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what would it look like to treat recruitment as a sort of agent of culture building? So, I mean, given that we are now looking at more kind of skills and fit potentially, what would that mean in terms of getting people onboarded and getting people into organizations and being able to build a sort of thriving organization from the cultural perspective?
I think that great businesses are really clear with what their culture is. And I think, again, you need to review it regularly, which is why it's so important to have it on leadership agendas. Every single meeting is our culture speaking to who we are, to our values, if we have them. What is the culture that we want to move to and to create. But to be able to transmit that with employer branding is key. And there's not many organizations that do it super well. But then you are really attracting those people who you want to hire, essentially, who are going to, resonate with the culture that you're putting out there. And then onboarding becomes much easier. So I think the better that we can become at employer branding, and there's so much more that can be done. And unfortunately, those teams are sometimes tiny, often tiny. But I think that's the magic, actually, because then you really are already cutting out a big portion of work for yourself by attracting the talent that is going to work well within your organization.
I say you said they're tiny, but potentially also non-existent in some. So if there's somebody listening to this thinking, right, where do I even start? And it's been here thinking about it. Where do I even start with that? What would be your guidance?
With employer branding?
Yeah.
I mean, for sure, LinkedIn is the best platform for this. I think you can do it really inexpensively and really well. Video content is obviously 100% necessary. And just being really clear about how to describe and articulate what your culture is. So if you have that piece of work done, if you don't have that piece of work done, that's where you need to start to then be able to film the right content in and around your organization. Because I think it's just very aligned with what your customers see as well, and with what you're putting out there as your employer brand.
Yeah.
So
what human skills do you think are becoming more important in the workforce today?
I mean, emotional intelligence is going to be probably, such a key skill. It is already. But as we move forward and we integrate AI into everything that we do, that emotional intelligence kind of becomes even more important. The ability to connect with others, which is emotional intelligence, I guess. From an HR perspective, if business partnering is going to be taken over, in some way, shape, or form, what does that mean for HR? To me, it is about change and transformation. And I think potentially for everyone, that skill of being able to understand change and quickly adapt is going to be, again, even more key. Everything is felt like it's been speeding up for the last couple of decades, but now it's going to continue in that fashion. So being as prepared for change and as adaptable as possible is
that a skill you
important.
think you can build?
I do, actually. Yes. I think it definitely comes with more experiences of going through large scale change, but just our perception of it and how we view it and value it, and being able to sort of project ourselves into a future more easily, or be around people that can do that for us and paint that picture of what the future might look like in a positive light. Not to be so binary as negative and positive, but just taking AI and machines, that is quite scary to a lot of people, myself included. But to be able to paint a vision of what the future could be for HR professionals in my area, but whatever area you're working in, I think is a key skill for a leader to be able to do, to bring people along with you on that vision and keep people engaged.
And then it sort of speaks to what is then the organizational responsibility to enable people to feel like they can do those things and they can confidently change. So it almost suggests that the organization needs to be better at actively providing things like stability and psychological safety and empowerment and good management at all different levels that empowers people beneath them and things like that. So it really speaks to that the separate roles of the organization and the individuals within this kind of emerging context. Is that
Definitely.
Yeah.
And, the responsibility on employers to provide safe spaces for sure, but also access to support
Mm-hmm.
in many different forms that people might need is also really important to think through, and is a key role of the chief people officer to help an organization to make sure that those things are in place.
Yeah. So those are the so-called soft skills. What are the hard skills that people are seeking or that you think are most important for people to gain? And then what is the organizational responsibility to provide that reskilling and upskilling?
Yeah, it has to be around AI and everything to do with technology. They are the hard skills, and knowing what that means within your function, but also within a wider organization, and what might be coming down the line very soon, and just helping individuals to be prepared for that, because that again takes away some of the fear factor and that responsibility of the organization to help people to understand you're not all going to lose your jobs, and this is how it might look. We don't know all the answers, but these are the answers that we do know, and in the next 6 months these are the things that are going to be happening, and just having that stability, as you were saying, through speaking about it.
Yeah. I would assume that, much like marketing, HR people are often asked to demonstrate ROI, usually in a much faster time frame than is possible. What does that look like these days, and how do you best demonstrate the returns on the efforts that you are making within organizations?
It's one of the hardest areas for HR, and is again why I'm in favor of surveying more regularly, because you can see trends and you can see when different initiatives or experiments that you've been doing work and don't work, and what impact that has had. If you're really clever with how you're running an initiative and then asking the right questions within your surveying tool, then it's very possible to be able to show return on investment. It's not hard data, but it is good evidence that things are either working or not working. I think, again, setting out what those key performance indicators are that your commercial leaders believe in and are the right ones for that organization. How is the HR function helping to enable that commercial, goal or goals? Setting that out from the beginning is really important to then be able to show return on investment. But I think it's a moving target, honestly, because as soon as, again, an organization needs to go through a restructure, a lot of those metrics can be thrown out the window or become different. So I do think it's something that needs to be regularly reviewed between chief people officer and commercial director or CEO and finance director. It's kind of a combined effort with how you're going to show ROI. And some things that are right for the organization don't actually have a return on investment number that you're going to be able to put something to. And that's where your trust and credibility and relationship building comes into it.
And this must become so challenging if there isn't a CPO or HR doesn't have a seat at the more senior table, right? As your community finding that must be, must feel like there's no voice almost.
Yes, absolutely. And, some organizations that are reducing their HR team or not having any HR in quite large organizations. I'm not going to say actually what I think about those organizations, but it's a huge risk that they're taking. But it is also a really big message to the organization. If you do have HR or people, let's say, reporting into finance or reporting into legal, it really sends a message of what you want to say as an organization. So
about that culture. Yeah. Good question to ask for people interviewing, right? What's your HR team like, and where do they report to?
I want to mention two big trends that I'm not going to ask you to shoulder all responsibility for, but I would really be interested to get your perspective and what maybe the perspective is of the HR community that you interact with on the regular. One is the fact that there are so many more young people who are NEET, who are not in employment at the moment. And then at the same time, you have sort of rampant ageism in the workforce right now. So people who are kind of over late 40s, say definitely over 50, are struggling to stay in the workforce and to stay employed. What do you think is going on, and how can organizations and HR teams in particular start to address some of those issues?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, multi-generations within an organization is definitely making things complex. And so having ways that that can bring the differing views together through reverse mentorship and mentorship can be really, really helpful. It's tricky because in my day, which is often what I hear from leaders as well, working for free, as it was just the norm, and it would get you a foot in the door. But of course, it cuts out huge parts of the population and is not an inclusive way to continue to have that. And so lots of organizations do not do that anymore. And, there's lots more regulation around it. But it has meant, I think, that it's harder to get a foot in the door for a lot of young people, which is really sad and also quite demoralizing. I have 2 stepchildren who are trying to get into the job market. One of them already has 5 years experience and he's finding it extremely difficult. So I don't know what the answers are there. Definitely using the apprenticeship levy, like so many organizations are still not using that effectively, is one great way. But then, within the organization, just being able to, I think another issue is also that younger generations are expecting so much more from the company, and also a promotion every 6 months, which is very difficult to manage and does cause a lot of frustration on both sides, but I think so having career paths mapped out that aren't necessarily always upwards is really, again, a very helpful initiative or design process to go through, and working with those groups of people to show that you can move across, you can take on extra projects, you could do a side hustle even, that's becoming more and more common, that businesses are allowing that and actually taking advantage of that in many ways, because it gives you a whole lot of other skills to have a side hustle. So things are definitely changing, but there's also a lot of frustration within business. So I think you have to carefully craft ways to bring people together and the great ideas to the table. Cross-functional project teams is also something really good that helps to, of course, remove silos as well, where you've really got a diverse cross-functional team on something. I always really liked, but it was, again, quite easy in a sense at Stella McCartney, because we could have that for sustainability. Because it's such a strong value in the organization, the whole company set up on sustainable fashion. So that kind of cross-functional team was really easy to set up and worked really well, bringing in, a lot of diversity.
One of the points you spoke to there was actually something I was considering as the whole topic if it talked to you about was around the peril of the middle manager, and it's a generational thing as well. But there's a lot of writing about it at the moment that it's the real most challenged role because of managing Gen Z is like a generation, a sweeping statement, but then also that they're the generation above who they're managing up to are so different, and almost like middle management are really trapped in this just melting pot of in the middle. It's a hot, well, it could be a podcast series, I imagine, on how to work way through it. If you could rewrite HR's mandate for the future, what would it be?
You're really good question.
Just really small questions. Simple, easy to answer stuff.
Small question. HR's mandate has to be figuring out how to help people thrive within the context of constant change and transformation. That is, not easy to do, but that is essentially what our role already is and is going to become even more so. again, because we're in that unique position, just pulling in all of the insights that you have from the leadership team, from people coming into the organization, from people not even in the organization yet. Like, you have so much data and really valuable insight. It's got to be about how you combine that to help people to thrive within an organization and have a great experience.
Fantastic. Very well said. See, it's very easy question after all. Where can people find out more about you if they wanted to get in touch?
Yes. So we are peopleflow.com is my website. But we're really active on LinkedIn. A lot of the community side of what we do that's, not in real life, because we host a lot of in real life events, which is where the community sense and the real connectivity comes to life. But on LinkedIn, we have lots of information that we post about. And you can find out all about the community side of what we do, because it can be quite lonely in HR. And so, it feels really aligned for me to channel everything that I personally felt and still feel in many ways into what the community is about and the kinds of things that we talk about and are there for, what our purpose is.
And what's next for you in your career?
So I really want to expand the community. I didn't know that I was really searching for a sense of belonging. I kind of knew, but I wasn't consciously intentional about it. And now this, creation of the community has shown me that sense of belonging is really, really important to me and to so many other people. So growing the community, hosting more events, growing it outside of London. So we have our first event in Paris in October, which I'm very excited about. But, US, we've got a few members already in the US and Canada as well. But then consultancy, I'm growing this human-centered approach, and my kind of style or brand of human resources is something that I'm also extremely passionate about, because there's so much need for it. People want it, organizations need it. And so, just expanding the consultancy side of what we do to more businesses, more industries outside of luxury, fashion and beauty.
Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. So nice to do this in person.
Yeah, it was really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.